Hello one and all. This is my review of Ascendance Bookworm Short Story Collection Volume 1. And I gotta say, I absolutely freaking love this volume. I mean, this series is a huge, massive world filled with a frankly insane number of characters, all of whom have their own story, all of whom have their own journey. And so often we miss big chunks of that because, Myne is a fairly unreliable narrator. Either because, she wasn't there for certain parts, or she misunderstood certain parts, or she was so obsessed with books that she missed certain parts, or because, she simply didn't have the context to understand what was going on around her. But this volume, we know we have like the short side stories at the end of every volume, but this one, just seeing just so many different perspectives of events that Myne was, part of, but not really there for, was just absolutely amazing. First three stories are all about, Myne post becoming Myne getting her memories back, and it's just so freaking weird. Seriously, all of a sudden, this girl, who Luz described as tiny, weak, adorable, and pretty much barely clinging to life, lost all common sense and really memories of the world she's grown up in. All of a sudden she started acting just so absolutely weird and bizarre, and that's easy enough to explain, oh, the fever fried her brain, oh no. But on top of that, she also now had knowledge of things she shouldn't have had knowledge about. Like, for example, how to tie her hair up properly, or how to make shampoo. That's not something that anybody in this world should know about, but a fever gave Myne that knowledge. And on top of that, now when Myne gets mad, she gets scary, with Thule literally being afraid for her life, as Myne says, "I'll make them cry themselves to death. Okay, I'm going to sleep now." What the freak? Genuinely, what the freak? That is the most psychotic line I've ever read in my entire life. I don't think this world has the concept of demonic possession, but seriously, Myne's eyes turned rainbow and she started basically emitting a yellow aura. That sounds like demon possession to me. And yet, this whole thing was overall a good thing for her family. For Thule, she just wanted to play with her little sister, which, that was a weird moment for me too, because I'm not sure if simply because of how I'm used to older Thule or just because of Myne's perspective, but I always viewed her as the reliable older sister type, and I forgot, oh yeah, when this is going on, she was 7 years old. She just wanted to play with her little sister. She had, she was a child. She had every right to be a child. And Myne becoming, Myne awakening into her old memories let her actually play with Myne, because Myne learned how to make shampoo and they were able to work together to make it. That made her very happy. Not to mention Myne, awakening as Myne gave her the motivation to actually start working, to actually start trying to get out of bed and go out into the forest. So she was able to play with her on top of that as well. Not to mention, with Luz, she was able to show him how to make pancakes, which his brothers weren't able to steal. Huzzah! And Luz was so enraptured by this, he decided, if I follow Myne's instructions, I get to eat more tasty food. Therefore, I will devote my entire life to following Myne. This is pancakes. Pancakes convince this man to follow this girl for the rest of his life. I love it. I absolutely freaking love it. And on top of that, when he finds out that when he sees Myne scaring the living daylights out of his brothers, he's impressed, saying she's as determined as a Fae beast and is probably going to kill his siblings. I love you, Luz. I absolutely freaking love you. Oh, and then I just want to mention one other scene. When Thule is studying and learning how to, read from pictures book, she's like, "Hey, Myne, how much is this book I'm currently holding right here?" And Myne's like, probably about 2 small coins, or the equivalent of what Gunther makes in 18 months. Oh, Lord above. Seriously, the transition from Myne being a poor commoner girl to Myne being one of the richest commoner girls in all of existence is just weird. So utterly, utterly weird, and I loved it. Anyway, though, then we moved on to part 3. And this was really interesting because there was a very common theme through a lot of these stories of literally everybody hating Sylvester. I mean, seriously, God above. The Veronica faction, obviously they hate him for arresting his own mother, whereas the Lysgang faction hates him for not doing it sooner, and everybody hates him for not telling anyone else that he was going to do this. Not even his own wife knew he was about to arrest her mother-in-law. Oh my lord above. So everyone's panicking and trying to figure out, okay, what the freak do we do now? How do we do this? How do we manage this? All while they're still in the midst of the Archduke conference. Holy mother of God, I feel bad for these people. But anyway, though, the first chapter in this section is about Riarda becoming Myne's retainer and her head attendant. And I absolutely love that as soon as Karstead said, oh yes, this girl is Rosa Myne. She's my daughter. The daughter I had with Rosemary. Riarda's like, yeah, no, boy, I freaking raised you. I know when you're lying. So yeah, she always knew from the very beginning that Myne was in fact not Karstead's daughter. Now, I'm not sure if she would have realized that Myne was a commoner with the devouring, but definitely interesting. I mean, she is, above all else, completely and totally loyal to the Archduke's family, so I don't think she'd ever actually do anything about that, but still, I found that very interesting. Also, God above, the way Ferdinand describes her, she is rich with mana, has knowledge from the world of the gods, and is even considered the saint of Ehrenfest. Holy mother of God above. I'm not sure, what she thought knowledge from the world of the gods actually means, but that is an insane way to describe her. An accurate way for sure, but still an insane way of describing her. Also, weren't you the one that started calling her the Saint of Ehrenfest, if I remember correctly? Oh, I love it. But anyway, though, overall, Riarda's like, yeah, no, this is a bad idea. Florentia agrees with me that this is a bad idea. Bringing a child from the temple in as your adopted daughter, she's gonna suffer more than you could possibly freaking imagine. But she ultimately agrees to it, both because she's loyal to the Archduke's family, and because she realizes that this is someone that Ferdinand wanted her to protect. Someone that Ferdinand actually freaking cared about, and that meant a lot to her. Oh god, and then just the end line, with Elvira basically saying that she actually thinks that Myne, despite being an adopted daughter and a girl, could become the next Archduke. And Riarda is actually somewhat insulted by this, but hey, listen up. Georgine, I was with Georgine when all that was going on. I saw her suffering. If you honestly think that someone could come in and do what she couldn't, then that is just, that's awful. That is a terrible, terrible thing to say. But also, Elvira knew about Georgine, knew her story, and still thinks that Myne is more qualified to be the next Archduke than she was. Oh, that's insane. Absolutely freaking insane. Oh, and speaking of insane, next chapter is about Hartmut. And his introduction is wild, as he basically says that he doesn't want his mother serving someone of such low status, aka Myne, aka the Saint of Ehrenfest, aka his literal freaking goddess. Oh, Lord above. But even more than that, though, I found really interesting the fact that, Hartmut was irked by the fact that Ehrenfest was so obsessed with factional politics when they were, already considered the most hated duchy in the entire world. Those above them hated them for rising up in ranks. Those below them hated them for rising up in ranks. Nobody felt they deserved the rank they currently had. And yet, instead of dealing with that, instead of actually working to improve themselves, they were all busy fighting over, oh, who do you like more, Lysgangs or Veronica, blah, 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 blah. And what's so fascinating about that is that Myne agreed. As soon as Myne came to the Royal Academy, she's like, yeah, no more factional politics, and just outlawed it within a day. What the absolute freak? Seriously, what the absolute freak? And this just really goes to show that, Hartmut has every right to believe in Myne, to want to worship Myne when she literally fixed the problem that he spent years being ticked about. Amazing. Anyway, though, then she actually did her whole blessing during her baptism, and he was so awed by the sheer beauty and spectacle of it, they basically decided right then and there to serve someone else. And unfortunately, though, he missed his chance to actually greet her, because Wilfreid dragged her away. At which point he decides, alright, Wilfreid, the man who everyone thinks is going to be the next Archduke, he is my enemy, and I must drag him down and destroy him so that Myne can become the next archduke. Seriously, his switch flipped that hard and that freaking fast, and I loved it. But anyway, though, then we have chapters about Lamprecht and Eckhart, the brothers, who really don't get along. And Lamprecht is wondering, hey, should I keep serving Wilfreid when he might not end up becoming the next archduke? Which is an absolutely insane thing to think right here, especially because this is still before the Ivory Tower incident. This is just when Wilfreid is, trying to study to prepare for his baptism. So, yeah, that's like, why would you drop out now? He might still make it. There's still a chance. Lord above. Though that is not nearly as stupid as the other retainers who are mad at Myne and view her as a lowly adopted daughter who doesn't know her place. Dudes, she literally kept your lord, your master, from being disinherited and sent to the Ivory Tower. Show some freaking respect. Weirdly enough, Oswald is like the calm and rational person here who doesn't seem to blame Myne at all, which is weird, very, very weird. But anyway, though, the highlight of this chapter for me was Eckhart saying they didn't choose not to serve Wilfreid, rather Father stopped him because he knew that he would use that chance to assassinate Veronica. Oh, that's insane. And, as bonus, the author actually posted on Twitter what would have happened if Eckhart had been successful, if he actually managed to kill her, and bad things, very, very bad things. But anyway, though, the chapter ends with Lamprecht deciding, okay, Wilfreid's working hard, so therefore I'll work hard to support him. And then we get to Eckhart, who is just fully insane, and is irked that Damuel understands the greatness of Ferdinand better than his own brother Cornelius, and feels like he was a failure for not praising him more. Oh, Lordy above, this man, his dedication is something else, I'll say that. Oh, also a great moment in this chapter was him saying that he's irked that Myne keeps someone as incompetent as Angelica by her side. Oh, the irony of that statement. Beautiful. Absolutely freaking beautiful. But really the highlight here was just basically that, Eckhart and Lamprecht, Eckhart and Justice are shocked at how kind Ferdinand is treating Myne. While Myne absolutely does not feel that kindness, they say that he's treating her with as much care and consideration as he would an especially valuable plant for brewing. And while that might sound cold, that is like the highest level of care that Ferdinand is physically capable of giving to anything else. And they're like, hey, he's opening up a little. He's eating more. This is great. He's actually acting like a human being. And they are really grateful to Myne in this moment. Good for them. But anyway, though, then we get a Wilfreid chapter. And God freaking Christ above. This boy is dumb. This boy is next level dumb. Thinking his grandmother is his sibling. Thinking his grandmother is still off getting treatment for her illness and has been for the last year without bothering to send him a single freaking letter. And then thinking that all of Melchior's retainers should be fired because he can't give a proper greeting. He's 3 years old. And, Wilfreid's retainers try to explain this away, like, oh, well, Wilfreid didn't grow up with siblings, so he doesn't know how kids act, how they grow, how they're supposed to be. And it's like, yeah, no, God above, this is a step beyond that. This is Wilfreid being fully and completely incapable of understanding someone else's situation, putting themselves in their shoes, and it's just insane. Absolutely freaking insane. And anyone who thinks that Wilfreid should be the next archduke should be, thrown off a freaking cliff. But anyway, though, then we get some Cornelius chapters. And Cornelius, he's a little bit bummed that he failed to save Myne from being kidnapped and poisoned and put into a coma for 2 years. And after a bit of pouting and moping, he decides, all right, you know what? I'm going to do my best. I'm going to start trying really freaking hard so that I can protect Myne from anyone, especially Hartmut. God, I love their dynamic. Absolutely freaking love it. Well, seriously, Hartmut literally even said, you are a failure of a guard knight, are you not? Brutal. Absolutely freaking brutal. Though I think my favorite part of these chapters was Elvira. She is calm. She is terrifyingly calm. I mean, part of this is because, Ferdinand said, I will save Myne. She will be okay. and he never speaks in absolute. So she knows, okay, she will be okay. I know that. But at the same time, I mean, her daughter was attacked. Her daughter is in a coma for the next several months at least, and yet she is calm and focused on the task at hand. I mean, that is a true noblewoman right there, and I love it. I also just want like a side chapter just of her reacting to all of this, of her like crying her eyes out in a hidden room, then before coming out and being like, all right, let's get to business. Let's figure out all this. Let's do this. Let's placate the Light Gang faction. She's amazing. She is absolutely amazing. And the best noblewoman in this series? Maybe. Like the best adult woman in the series. I can't really think of anyone better than her. Huzzah! Alright, then we get to two of my favorite chapters. The Hersher chapter and the Roderick chapter. And Hersher, their dorm supervisor, whose name I don't actually know how to pronounce. Hersher is how I'm saying it. That sounds kind of right. Anyway, though, I knew this girl was, like, just fully and completely oblivious, but God above, I underestimated her, as she doesn't even know what season it is, and on top of that, she is fully and completely unaware that Veronica is in jail and has been for, like, the last 3 freaking years. Seriously, throughout this chapter, time and time again, she's like, oh, I'm sure Veronica's not happy about that. Oh, I'm sure Ferdinand is fighting Veronica. Oh, I'm wondering why Veronica let that happen. It's like, girl, you hate Veronica. I know that you are separated from Ehrenfest, but Veronica is one of your biggest enemies, the one who cut your funding, and yet nobody bothered to tell you that she's no longer around, that she was freaking imprisoned. That was a big freaking deal in Ehrenfest. You should have known at least that. But despite how utterly, absolutely oblivious she is, she did act like a true dorm supervisor here and actually really fought for Myne to get special accommodations. She didn't need them, but she fought really freaking hard. And I'm like, is this the same Hersher I know? Because, oh wow, she was intense. She was very freaking intense and passionate and beautiful. And I just gotta give her a round of applause. Absolutely love that. Also just love that, when she found out that, oh, Myne is Ferdinand's student, she just laughed like, oh, I'm happy that he now knows the pain of being a mentor to someone who causes problems. And she had no idea. She had no idea how right that was. I mean, I know Ferdinand was a lot to handle in the academy, but I have to imagine that Myne is just so much worse, considering all the chaos she caused in just even her first year at the academy. And I also did just really love that Florentius sent a note asking for consideration, since Myne is such a precious girl who literally saved both of her children. I mean, I know there's a lot of people online who don't like Florentia, who feels that she is an awful mother to Myne, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole topic for another day, but I do just love those moments where she is actually, like, really kind, really helpful. Like, at the end of one volume, like, she, talked to Sylvester and the rest of them and said, listen up. You will not yell at Myne anymore. Yes, she royally forked up at the academy, but we have given her absolutely no training or preparation for this thing she's had to face there. So don't yell at her. It's not her fault. Love that. Absolutely freaking love that. And then we get to my actual favorite chapter of this volume, Roderick. She who saved my heart. And this was just so fascinating. I mean, first off, it draws a very interesting parallel that I didn't notice before. Roderick and Wilfreid, they were both, ignorant people who were manipulated to go to the Ivory Tower, and yet their punishments were worlds apart. Wilfreid, who's been complaining for 20 freaking volumes that the Ivory Tower ruined his life, destroyed his reputation, blah, 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 didn't really lose anything as a result. Like, they told him, okay, now you're no longer guaranteed to become the next archduke. Sad, so awful. But then he got engaged to Myne, and he became guaranteed to become the next archduke. Even though he is quite literally the least qualified person in the entire world to hold that position. Seriously, make Damuel the next archduke. He'd be better at it than Wilfreid. Not above. Anyway, though, on the other hand, we have Roderick, who, same thing, he didn't know it was illegal, he didn't know it was a crime, he just did what he was told to do by his dad. And yet, the entire faction basically turned on him for sullying their savior, sullying their shining ray of hope, betraying him. And his father started beating him for the thing he ordered him to do, and hasn't stopped for 3 freaking years. So, yeah, worlds apart. Absolute freaking worlds apart. And how they were punished for quite literally committing the exact same crime. God above. So, yeah, now I hate Wilfreid even more. Yay! Meanwhile, the other thing I really love about this chapter is that it gave us a really cool insight into the Veronica faction. And they certainly aren't a monolith. There are people here who believe, oh, Veronica was trapped, while others believe, no, she was outright framed, she never committed any crimes, blah, blah, blah. But they all seem to agree that Wilfreid will become the next archduke, and then work with Georgine and Detland to strengthen their bond with Arnsbeck and free Veronica. Holy mother of God above, that is insane. That is absolutely freaking insane. Like, seriously, Georgine is targeting your duchy. She is an enemy of Ehrenfest, and yet you think that she'll work with you. God freaking Christ above. And as for freeing Veronica, I'm not gonna lie, I never actually considered that. Would they have done that? Will Wilfreid do that when he becomes the next archduke? Because, yeah, that's a very, very good question. I mean, I could see it happening. There was the woman who raised him that was basically his mother for the first almost decade of his life, but yeah, that could be bad. Like, Veronica freed, not vengeance, she could scorch earth. She could go scorch earth and destroy everything. Though at the same time, she'd be old. She would be really freaking old. I mean, it's actually been said that, most people don't become archdukes until they're at least 30, or else they'll be, looked down upon and mocked and berated for being so inexperienced, whatever. And, I mean, that would mean Veronica's probably already at least 60, so by that point, she'd be, in her 80s? I mean, there'd be people like Grandpa Bonifacius and the great-grandfather Leisgang who are still up and kicking at a very, very old age, but I don't know. Would she really be as much of a threat if she came out when she was 80? Maybe. I'm not really sure. Let me think about that down below. But anyway, though, there are also other opinions, like Matthias actually believes that Myne could end up becoming the next Archduke, and while everyone else laughs at him about that, I mean, he's got a good point. He's got a very, very good point. Myne is certainly a million times more qualified than Wilfreid is. Curious. But anyway, though, then we get the Philine chapters. And I've got to say, I wildly, wildly misunderstood what was going on with Philine's father last time we saw him. Because when Philine said, that's it, I'm leaving this house, I'm never coming back, her father looked mortified. In that moment, I'm like, okay, you know what? He's realized, my God, my actions. I've lost both my children. How could I have done this? No. He doesn't care about his children at all. And even when seeing Philine being carried out in a cape, unable to move, his only thought is about Jansura, his wife. Instead, he's upset here because the house, this estate, it isn't in his name. It's in Philine's name. The house freaking belongs to her and will be hers as soon as she comes of age. At which point, she can kick her father and stepmother out of the house and force them to live on the streets. Oh, I love it. I absolutely freaking love it. I don't understand why Jansura didn't really seem to be concerned about that, though. I mean, she was ecstatic when Philine left. I mean, my best guess here is either that, Philine's father lied to her about who actually owned the estate, or she just isn't thinking that far ahead, or she just figures, okay, I'm going to just take everything this family has and then bolt before that happens. I mean, they're a very, very poor family, so it wouldn't be much, but I don't know. I genuinely don't know what was going through this woman's head, if anything at all was going through her head. But anyway, though, on top of that, this chapter did a really good job of explaining why Philine was so in love with Damuel. I mean, it's been said before, he saved her from, her family, but, everyone saved her from her family. There were a lot of people there, in the mission to save her, so why exactly is she so obsessed with him? And these chapters gave a very, very good reason for explaining that. I mean, not necessarily Damuel liking Philine, but, that's maybe in the future. But I fully understand why Philine likes Damuel now. That's perfect sense. Start off, while Myne was in the coma, Philine was working towards supporting her, just gathering the stories for her, and Damuel helped with that, and she was amazed and wowed that there could be a lay noble serving an archduke. I mean, the situation was a bit special, but still, that was an amazing situation. Especially because her father literally said, no matter how compassionate she's said to be, I can guarantee she won't treat lay nobles any better than the rest. You are wrong, man. You are very, very wrong about that. But anyway, though, Philine and Damuel, they drew a little bit closer while Myne was in the coma. And then once, Myne came out and made Philine her retainer, Damuel was absolutely ecstatic. He was so happy for her and promised to support her as her fellow lay noble in Myne's service, which is a very tough role to play in the castle where everyone is constantly mocking and berating them for being lay nobles who are unworthy of serving Myne. Then, though, Philine went back home, got locked in her attic for several hours, and spent the time just telling her brother stories like, don't worry, a brave, handsome knight will come in and save us. And then a brave, handsome knight literally kicked down the door and saved her, wrapping her in his cape so that nobody could see her commoner clothing, which is not only incredibly respectful, but also, isn't that like a pickup line in this world? Oh, baby, let me wrap you in my cape of darkness. I feel like that's been said several times before. So yeah, he picked her up, carried her out of the building, saved her from her family, literally her knight in shining armor. Fully and completely understand why Philine is obsessed with him. Love that. And then we get some Charlotte chapters to wrap things up. I mean, there's still a Philine chapter after that, which feels like honestly kind of a weird way to end this. I mean, put the Philine chapter with the other Philine chapters. That makes the most sense. Having the Philine chapter after the Philine chapters and after the Charlotte chapters, that just feels like a weird way to break it up. I mean, the Philine chapter didn't even end on like a interesting note. It was like, it just ended with her being like, oh, I feel inferior to Hartman, which, weird, very, very weird. Not even hopeful, optimistic, anything like that. Just like, oh man, Hartman is so much better than me. I can never compete with him. I don't really like that. I like the Charlotte chapters better as an ending to the short story collection. But anyway, though, the Charlotte chapters are focused on the fact that she is just so royally freaking ticked off that she's not going to become the next archduke. That Wilfreid has been guaranteed a position, despite the fact that he is completely incompetent, had an awful education, was raised by Veronica, and has a freaking criminal history. Seriously, in this chapter, Charlotte gives a better report about the Royal Academy than Wilfreid, and she wasn't even at the Academy! She still knows more. She was still able to explain things better than Wilfreid, despite hearing everything freaking secondhand. God Christ above! I'm royally ticked about that, seriously. And just, oh God, I really hated Sylvester this chapter because he's done all this to Charlotte. He's taken away her right to even her chance to compete for the throne and didn't even bother to warn her or explain things to her. I mean, Florentia shows up and, offers an apology and all that, but only because Charlotte's retainers actually tell her hey, we think Charlotte's about to have a full and complete mental breakdown, so would you mind just stopping by and saying hi? Oh, Lord above. Favorite thing about this chapter is the fact that Charlotte says, yeah, I don't really consider Wilfreid to be my brother, at all. We weren't raised together. I spent very little time with him. He's not my family. He's not a sibling to me. He's as close to me as Myne is, and I just freaking met that girl. Oh, I love that. Honestly, I know she didn't say it because she didn't want to hurt her mother, but I wish she'd said it. I absolutely wished she had said that. Oh, that'd be amazing. And though that chapter ends with her basically deciding that she's going to become a wife of another duchy, first wife of another duchy, so that she can support Myne, not Wilfreid, and also saying that she wished that she was a guy so that she could marry Myne. Seriously, Myne and Charlotte, that is a very interesting pairing. And then we get the second Charlotte chapter, which somehow ticks me off more than the first freaking chapter, as Oswald comes to Charlotte and is like, hey, Wilfreid is demanding you let him take credit for this investigation and lead it. And Charlotte's like, that's so freaking stupid. Fine, whatever, I'll let him do this. Only for it to reveal that Wilfreid didn't actually order that, didn't even think of it at all. And instead, it was Oswald tricking / lying to Charlotte about all of this, while also mocking her for needing to be more aware of her surroundings. An absolutely insane thing to say from someone who was working under Wilfreid. God Christ above. And why? What was the point of any of this? If you actually wanted Wilfreid to take, achievement for this, you could convince Wilfreid to talk to Charlotte about it. That would not be that hard of an argument to make. make. Instead, you've made an enemy of Charlotte and all of her retainers, one of whom is actually Florentia's retainer, who is just working with Charlotte for the moment on the printing industry. So you've just royally ticked off a retainer of the Archduke's first wife, only wife. Why would you do that, Oswald? Why on God's green earth would you do that? I mean, was your plan here to either make Charlotte so mad she exploded at you and that would, like, destroy your reputation, or just to, like, make Charlotte see her place, make her see that she must work under Wilfreid, and if she doesn't, that you'll manipulate and destroy everything around her? Either way, really freaking dumb plan, since just a few volumes after this, Charlotte goes to her mother and says basically, yeah, we should fire freaking Oswald. Dumb plan. Dumb plan, Oswald. Seriously, how are you the worst person in this entire volume? How are you worse than Roderick's father who beat him for 3 years? I don't know how, but you are, and I hate you so freaking much. Anyway, though, yeah, those are my thoughts on this volume. Let me know what you think down below. What was your favorite chapter? I mean, like I said, the Roderick chapters gave me so many different points of view that I hadn't considered before. The Herster chapter, just, oh God, I love seeing her really fight for Myne. The Philine chapter just puts so much in a new context of understanding that Philine owns the freaking house that her father and his wife and their child are now living in. Oh, I want her to kick them out. I so badly want her to kick them out and then just sell the house or whatever and just be done with it. Just so they'll suffer. Just so that they'll be in pain. Oh, that'd be amazing. And then, of course, Charlotte and her chapters and just... God, I hate Oswald and Sylvester a little bit because, seriously, man, he could have done so much more. He could have, gone to Charlotte, talked to her. He seems just, like, fully and completely oblivious to all the pain and suffering she's been going through, and that just ticked me off so much. But please, let me see all this down below, and until next time, peace!